I showed you that t-shirt he's gonna be wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Anyway, I guess we need to call this meeting to order. All right, operations plan. You ready to win?
Yep.
Call to order, public session, very good. Move on to presentation, discussion items, and hand this over to Chris.
All right, I've got Mr. Lindsay here with us today to address any questions that you may have about something that I might not know about, but this was sent out in the agenda packet, and there's nothing that I really need to go over or want to go over other than to say that now the Sewer South Phase 2, the application for the permit to operate that system is now in the Department of Environmental Services hands.
How about that?
So I got an email back from the engineer yesterday who asked the local office where they were in the review process, and they were reviewing it. They started that review yesterday. I don't know how long that takes. I don't know if they're gonna have any questions.
How
But
much in fines did they eventually pay?
it's still to be determined.
Oh, okay.
We gotta make sure that everything is
Okay.
what needs to be. So, you know, that it's fully ready to go based on that permit to operate being issued. So if there's items missing, then they need to go back and recapture, talk about the contractor, and then they'll, the clock will start again.
Okay.
But that may be a Christmas gift that we receive
Yeah.
sometime very soon. So that's really the only one I have that I wanted to touch on.
That news is just not trivial. I mean, that's a big deal.
It
Yeah.
is.
So is that, as soon as you get the okay, would he go into action that particular day, or would it need to wait a?
Technically, it can go into action right away, but
These users.
the users will need to connect to it.
Mhm.
Now, I think there's, if I understood correctly from the engineer, the connection to the welcome center is already made. Like, all they have to do basically is divert flow into the new manhole that ties into the existing system, and they can send it from the existing treatment plant where it's been going since the place was built, I'm assuming, over to the new pump station. But before that, they'll have to go and apply for service with Pioneer, so Pioneer and us will
Provide the
know how to,
water, yeah.
you know, when to start billing them for sewer service. So that'll be, you know, so it'll be a little bit of a notification part on my
Yeah.
process, and probably, you know, one of those things that the next thing to learn is how, you know, to go about handling this for both us and Pioneer. Pioneer's never had to do this
Have you,
either.
yeah, you've been talking with Terry?
I have.
Okay.
We've got, Lynn and I went down there. When was that? Back in, was that around June, July? We went down and met with
Yeah,
them.
it was summertime still. Yeah.
And we think we hopefully have that ironed out. We explained to them about the, you know, the capacity fees and the permitting and how all of that stuff worked. But that's now 6 months ago. But again, you know, we thought this thing was gonna be in service back in early to midsummer.
Yeah.
So, you know, they've probably forgotten, we've probably forgotten what we told them, but, you know, it'll be, you know, no matter what, it would be one of those things we have to start figuring out as people start applying.
I can see it definitely being an iterative process.
Mhm.
You know, there'll be some adjustments.
That's it. They've got the fees, they've already put on their phone tree, I believe it is, that if there's a sewer issue, push this number and it'll direct the call to us. Is that right, Kyle?
Correct.
So they're, you know, we should be set up as prepared as we can be, not knowing yet what we don't know. So we know there'll be issues and kinks we'll have to work out as we go through. But
I'll
I
tell you
think-
this, they're making headway up there at the, Paul Diner area up there. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
they
a
are.
lot of construction going on there, but he's not wasting no time.
Mm-mm. And, you know, since you brought that up, I'll give you an update on that. I need to reach out to Mr. Little again and figure out, you know, what's going on. But the contractor that did the Sewer South project, Moorhead Construction, Brent Little, they had contracted, well, I shouldn't say that. They had an understanding or a handshake agreement that Moorhead was gonna do the force main replacement for the Center Creek line. Well, for whatever reason, I don't know what happened. I would guess probably Moorhead is, you know, they've got a lot going on now, and it, you know, the window for them to be able to do that job may have opened and closed, and they just didn't have the resources to be able to do it now. But they had to withdraw. So Mr. Little had to go and find another contractor to do it. So, he had contacted a couple of them. I checked with Mr. McLean, because it was two firms I didn't know, I'd never heard of them. So I believe Scott mentioned, that they're, good to work with. So we're looking to see. So I need to contact them and find out if they've got a pre-construction meeting time set up. Because I can't, really, it'd be hard for me to approve the building permit for that apartment complex if we can't handle the flow from
Yeah,
it.
no, it's gotta be.
So
Yeah.
there would almost have to be, if we approve it, there'd have to be, I guess we'd have to get another attorney involved to write up some type of an agreement to say if we preemptively approve the building permit, but that force main is not in place, then,
Right.
that there has to be a
bets are
stop
off.
work order, or there cannot be a CO issue.
I'm sure he's
on it.
aware of that, I'm sure Little's aware of it.
He
He's been
is,
here
I'm
too many
sure.
times, yeah.
Well, one thing about Brett, he's always been extremely reasonable.
Very,
I agree.
very much so. One of the best I've ever worked
Absolutely.
with, if
Yeah.
not the best.
Yeah.
But, I got on here that just for our internal tracking more than anything else, the different tasks we've got with the feasibility study. So we had that first meeting back, I believe it was on December 2nd, kind of the kickoff meeting for that. Ms. Stevens typed up the meeting minutes, and those were disseminated to the public, and it was determined and discussed there. And then Mr. Bronson kind of brought it up yesterday that I think there's a consensus to try to do as much of this in public, in open session as possible, as much as we're able to do. With the understanding that there may and will be times where we will have to go behind closed doors to have some of those discussions. So with all of that said, I think it's moving forward. The committee was given a good bit of homework. And if I know you had already read the minutes, but if you haven't read them, what was sent out back, when was that? That was a week or so ago, I guess it was. In that attachment was Lawrence Flynn's memo that was part of what had to be done. So all these steps along the way, we're having to provide, because we have these certain milestones, target dates we have to hit, and we have to provide all of that information to Bonnie Ammons. So like that CIP that we had asked about that was due December 6th, I've got to get that and send that down to RIA for them, so they can see that we are, and the cities are all progressing with this thing that everybody's agreed to, right? So this was one of the
And
target
that's worth reading, folks.
milestone.
I mean, Flynn lays it out. He lays it out.
And he will be at the next meeting. He's coming up. There, the committee members are to read this, develop questions, comments, concerns, and address. Flynn will address us on whether, because it'll involve legal advice. I don't know if it'll happen in public or in private. I don't know, but he will be there. They were also given a lot of information regarding demographics of the area, populations inside and outside of cities. Just bombarded with study material. So the next,
If you had to go into executive session at the depot, what would you do?
everybody had to go out and stand
Okay.
outside, but we wouldn't have it there. It wouldn't be, we would have the meetings, should probably all be here. I think they'll all be scheduled to be here.
Mhm.
The next meeting we have with them will be on the 9th.
January
But, say we had an executive session, something scheduled for the depot or
Mhm.
something like that, well, first of all, I probably would do whatever we could to not have to schedule it there, to do it at the next meeting that we have here. But if we did ever have something like that come up where we're say at the General Ed Center or somewhere else, we just have to kick everybody out, close the door, and have it.
That was a good meeting, minutes, Lynn, as always. So, I mean, they were really good, entertaining to read.
Thank you.
So that, really are the couple of things I was gonna touch on. Do you have any questions for myself or Kyle about any projects in particular?
I was looking at his, bid work back here. That's pretty good, guy. You know these numbers, don't you? Looking at all this stuff. So, I'm just asking a question, because I don't know anything about this kind of work here, but you said, pipe and fitting, $12,000, miscellaneous costs, flange kits. How do you bid for something? How do you come up with something like that? Just your knowledge?
Well, I mean, working with this over the years with contractors, I know what is usually put in.
Okay.
What needs to be done when
Yeah.
they put a piece of pipe
Yeah.
and a pump together. I mean, you can go down there and see because it's basically it's replacing kind. So basically, what's down there, we just take that same inventory.
Okay.
I mean, that made it easy when it's not new per se that you're putting something installing new. You can go and look and see what the old is and
Yeah.
basically fix it. So.
Where's Cove Utility at?
I don't know where they're actually home base. I guess I'm assuming Greenville.
Oh,
Is where I think that their home operation is.
You should have made that sound much more complicated, so it could have been more impressive.
okay. He's working in his pajamas.
You should have said, this is just years of experience.
Well, just looking on the next page in their letter,
Right.
it states that they are in Greenville on North Pleasantburg
Oh,
Drive.
okay. I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's on the-
Okay, I didn't see
I thought that's where they had listed.
that. Oh, there you go. Okay.
Kyle just has so much just knowledge. and-
Yeah.
It's
I
in-
mean,
it's in his
you know, you
DNA.
You get the agenda and all this stuff electronically, and you're trying to read these sheets on a computer. It's tough to do. You only get so far.
Dave, when you go to the environmental conference, right, and you're down there with hundreds of other professionals around there, Kyle's got a little entourage of people that just, it's like this little magnet that people just come to him and just.
So you got any clothes flying in the plane next time?
That's one thing I do know is that the key to, a professional career is networking out. And Kyle has done an excellent job of that. I have witnessed that in action. All right, we'll go ahead then, if nobody else has anything else, we can move on to action items and, hand this over to Chris.
All right, and this is one that Mr. Giles already touched on this just a little bit. And this is an item that if it's $100,000 or more, it's gotta go before the board for approval based on our procurement code. Well, this is one that for a number of projects that we have bundled together into one and put it out there for bid. So when we were developing the budget, we had, was it 4 or 5 that I think we had in general that we packaged together and put out there in a request for bids. And we had a cost in mind for the budgetary purposes. Well, it came in, we only received one bid and it was from Cove, and it came in over the amount that we had budgeted.
Mhm.
And that's what led to Kyle generating that memorandum to where, we would still recommend moving forward with approval based on the savings. So Kyle, if you wanna take this one and mention kind of how that will work and again, we'll request that we do move forward. I think that, we would be happy with who submitted. And by the way, Cove Utility is one that built the new Flat Rock pump station.
Well, and I understand that the board's got to pass it, but gosh, down here in the second part, the mixture gear drive, it come in under, so it's gonna be essentially a wash, so it shouldn't be no issue.
No, yeah. I mean, and that's absolutely correct. We had initially put these in as little projects or individual projects, but after looking into it more and actually talking with a few contractors, it made more sense to just bundle everything in one and actually put it out as one. It just makes it easier on, to me,
Yeah,
everybody.
I can
And they have
see
one contractor ordering everything instead of us trying to order the equipment and then work, it's just easier to put everything.
I feel like we're in an insurance commercial, bundle and say,
Yeah.
you know,
So, again,
bundle A, Save.
I mean, I kinda, once we had, what we had projected, projected this cost in, January of this year, putting it together for the budget, and, things change, cost goes up, and, but I was glad, cause I didn't know we was gonna be able to do it till I started running some numbers off of those other mixers, gear drives that I just ordered, and, saw that there was a significant savings off of that project, so. Looks like it's a wash, makes total sense.
Well, do I hear a motion if we take this to the board for
Oh,
approval?
absolutely, I'll make a motion, we take this to the board and get it approved.
I'll second. All right, any other discussion or comments? Thank you, Kyle, for doing this.
Yeah.
Once again, show your prowess is
Y'all make it easy. Good. Anything?
All right, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, carry.
I'm good, okay, thanks. See y'all.
Thanks, Kyle. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
All right. Move on to item 2 there.
Okay, exhibit C in your packet, it leads off the letter, of recommendation from KCI Technologies. This has to do with the CMAR project for the dewatering equipment replacement that we have, is to be funded by the SCIP grant. That we're not sure the timing of everything, so what this is a request, if necessary, to preemptively grant approval for, Harper General Contractors to procure the screw press submittals. And the amount for that would be $99,750, which is below that $100,000 threshold, but since it's part of a larger project, it's gonna require board approval too. And in speaking with the project manager, the project engineer about this, he now doesn't think it's gonna be necessary from a timing standpoint, that this is not the critical path any longer, but in the event that it does go back to being that, we wanted to go ahead and have that board approval, to execute that agreement, prior to February. So that's what the request is for.
So is there any downside?
There's the only downside, and that's what I asked, and we went through this, I went through this with Tom Volmar and Steve, the engineers for this project, because it does assume a little bit of risk that if for whatever reason this project does not move forward, we would be on the hook for paying the $99,750
For the equipment?
for those submittals.
Right.
But we're not procuring the equipment yet, but just for those submittals. But where we checked or verified this with them, that if we spend that money, we don't get anything in return other than, we don't get any equipment replacement, the project does not move forward. But we're not obligated to the contract to fulfill that contract with KCI for the full engineering of the project. So it would have been money that we would have been spending on engineering either way. But the likelihood of it, that happening, default, if you will, is
It's pretty low risk.
very low.
Yeah.
But right now, everything has to do with timing, and this is a way we've got to make sure that we get everything
Keep moving.
Yeah, keep moving, so we meet that June 2026 deadline that RA has for completion of these projects. So we're in good shape now. This request is to make sure that we stay in good shape on that timeline.
Gotcha. Motion to move that to the board?
Yeah, I second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion on that? Anything else we need to know about it, Chris? I mean, seems straightforward.
I don't think so, and if you have any questions about it, Steve Barbian said he'd be more than happy to take a phone call from us if we needed to call him for you to ask him any questions, and he said he could do the same if it does advance the board, if they have any questions about it then, but I think that their letter here spells it out really well. Because again, we hashed this thing, I bet we spent 2 hours going through all the different scenarios and making sure that they understood our risk, because we would be the ones that are out of the money, we didn't spend it, and we found a way that it still would not be a net loss for us because of the money we would save in the engineering costs, so we still would have that process done.
And it
And
needs to
we-
be done.
And we
Yeah,
have to do it.
Yeah,
That's
it
exactly
needs to be
right.
done, there's
Yeah,
no
just
ifs,
bottom
ands,
line.
and buts about it.
Well, all four say aye.
All
All against, okay, very good. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll move on to the executive director's discussion.
All right, regulatory compliance matters, we don't have any known issues that are out there that, I just continue to keep that on this agenda for this group in the event that we do have anything we need to discuss, but nothing at this time. The satellite sewer system corrective action plans, we've received those, they were all submitted and received in October, I believe that was when it was. The deadline was extended due to the hurricane. Everybody submitted those to us. Ms. McCullough, Allison, myself, Michael Trainum, our environmental attorney, and our engineering consultant all reviewed these independently, met up, went through them, provided any comments, feedback that we had on all of these actually. We had comments on all of them, just kind of a request for some more information from everyone. And they were, those are put in the form of a letter sent to all of the cities. I don't know if she sent that to you or sent it to Mr. Mulder, with Seneca.
I've got them all, I just want, so she got everything she needs.
I think that there's still, I think that, I don't know that for certain, but I would think if she has received whatever comment addressing whatever comment she had, she would have let us know.
Right.
So I don't know that but the deadline for that, we extended that to sometime in mid-January. So there's a time frame to get all of that put together. Now, the only thing in there, and I think she did reach out to you about this, was a CIP, and what they're looking for, and I say they, because this is one of those areas where the feasibility study and our corrective action plan meet up, is with these capital improvement plans and the budgeting. And what RA is looking for, and I brought ours in here so you can see it, is something like what I have on the table. And you don't have to look at it now, but it's worth looking at after the meeting, because that's our 20-year master plan and how we have monies allocated for fiscal years for 20 years. And that's on, you can kind of see that spread across the right side. But it also includes in there as what was requested by the feasibility, for both of them, was it incorporates operational costs in there too, with finding and identifying the sources of inflow and infiltration. So you can see there's a few lines in there where you can see money spent in every year. I think there's 4 of them every year for 20 years. So that was to be included in there as well. So whenever you do put that together, and again, we've got to submit those to RIA as part of that feasibility process.
Do the Douglas have I know for us, we've got scheduled for the city as a whole, that they were encompassing all the departments, but the utility does not have anything like this.
Walhalla Westminster, we have theirs. They
Right.
needed to go and add a few things to theirs too. They
Okay.
provided the capital items, but didn't include the operational matters in there. So we sent comments back to them asking for that to be updated and resubmitted to us. And we're waiting on that. So when when I say that the comments, that's part of the comments that was asked, but they've already sent us what they have.
Okay, so the CIP, well, we can talk about that later.
And,
All right.
and
What
Seneca
does that
has
stand for?
one, it's in the back of what GMC put together that you sent in October.
Right.
But I think that what needed to be done, and this was for that team that reviewed everything, they just wanted it laid out more like that, so there was a schedule and a cost associated with it. So you have one that's in the back of that book at for a high level
Right.
from GMC, so you may be able to utilize
And
that.
And just fashion up something to where
That's-
it's formatted like this.
Because, and everybody understands that these things are not locked in stone.
Right. Just
They
representative.
they
of what
move,
the- Yeah,
they move, and that one
what
there,
the picture looks like
That-
right now.
right, and that one is for $303 million over 20 years, and that again includes our operational matters, maintaining our GIS system, going out and CCTVing and cleaning, that's incorporated in there. But, the stuff you have to do, and we have that as a priority number one, and that whole thing is prioritized. But we also have some priorities 2 and 3 that are, the twos, some of those need to be done, well, at some point in time, but we don't know exactly when, like the plant upgrade. And some of those are priority 3, which may or may not ever be done, because those are strictly associated with growth for the most part, right? So those are some things that we may determine as a board that we don't need to proceed or pursue these things, because that sheet of paper there was provided to our rate consultant. And he used that information to help put together what our rates are gonna be recommended to be, over the coming years to fund this.
When would that start? In 25?
In 25, June 1st or July 1st, 2025. But, again,
That's $15,150,000 a year.
it's broken down. So, and it breaks it down on the bottom. And again, look at it
Yeah, I will.
afterwards. But just for your example, fiscal year 2026, it shows on here $22,800,000 in first year. Year 2, almost $43 million. And then year 3, year 4 is $13 million. So it will average out. But a bulk of the projects we have, because there's been so much deferred maintenance, plus the plant expansion that has been identified that's gonna be needed in 10 years, that $303,700,000 is very much front loaded. So the bulk of what we need to do is gonna be on the front
Make the
end.
continuous improvements. Okay.
That's correct.
So, did this money come from the cities and the counties, from?
I've got it on there with the funding, because that was one of the things that we were asked to do in the feasibility study,
I read
to
that.
identify the funding source, and you cannot assume you're gonna get a grant. It doesn't mean you can't apply for grants or receive money from outside, but you can't make that assumption. So we've identified the funding sources in here, and it's very general: cash and or debt, primarily debt. This one project here for I-85 sewer, we've got it at zero cost to us, but that's what the counties want to do, because it's in the master plan. So I've got the funding source for that, so Coney County. Some of these things are just annual budget, O&M budget. So we would just budget, those would be the smaller ticket items, like what you had approved previously that we could do and just build into the annual fund. We'd do some of those.
Maybe this is for the finance folks more so than it is for us. But if, as it was well stated in the feasibility minutes, it was recommended we go up to $25 per gallon, and we only went up, about half of that, so the cities, the residents wouldn't have such a burden. How is this gonna be paid for?
Well, what you're referring to, Mr. Kyle, is the impact fees.
Yeah,
So the impact fees can't pay for just a straight up replacement of equipment, the like for like. So if we replace a 1 million gallon a day pump station with a 1 million gallon a day pump station, the impact fees or not to pay for that, because it doesn't add any capacity
Okay.
to the pump station. But if you go from a 1,000,000 gallon a day pump station to a 2,000,000 gallon a day pump station, the impact fees could be used to pay that difference between the million and for the upsize of it. And the same with the treatment plant. So that's how those fees will work. An interesting fact that if you read those minutes from the feasibility study, Joel Jones, who's the executive director at REWA right now, he said they have seen their impact fee or the cost to add
50 bucks.
capacity per gallon at $50 a
50
gallon.
bucks a gallon.
That's what they're charging?
That's what they're seeing with the recent bid they had, was it was gonna equate for them to do an expansion of $50 a gallon.
I mean, I'm looking at it, you know, you guys, utility, I'm looking at it from the taxpayers. Man, that's a hell of a burden, I'm just telling you. So,
Well, a lot of, well, you know, when you look at replacement items, you know, because we're still funding depreciation, or we're not?
No, sir.
We're not?
We stopped doing that back a number of years ago, so we didn't have to have a large rate increase, so we eliminated the depreciation.
What's in that fund from years past?
We've been budgeting that to pay for
What's
projects
going
with the plant, like going back to this here, the funds in this green and white sheet, what we used to call the depreciation fund
on?
is now what's it called, projects and contingency fund. And those pay for, you know, these, if the GL code on the right side, if the number associated with that starts with 1501,
Yeah.
that's what's paying for
Remind me
those.
when we stopped doing depreciation. When
Was that- Was it around 2022, 21?
It's been several years.
I think it was around,
Maybe,
maybe the fiscal year 22 budget would be my guess. I may be off a year or so,
that makes sense.
but we did it in
Yeah,
order to keep
yeah.
from having a tremendous, because we were funding depreciation at 57%, and we were at $1 million or around that of annual depreciation. So we would have had to have a rate increase for an additional $570,000 to be able to still fund depreciation plus do what we needed to do with the annual budget.
Yeah.
So it was just decided we're not gonna fund depreciation any longer.
sitting back here, I don't remember any conversations about that back then when I was coming, but, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I couldn't remember it either, that's why I just had to remind myself, but, that time frame makes sense to me, without elaborating on why it makes sense.
And for whatever reason, I seem to remember it, again, I may be misremembering this, but when we were discussing some of this stuff, it seemed like around the COVID time when we weren't meeting here, we were meeting over at Gillette or somewhere where we could space out some. I don't know if it happened then, but around that time, I can remember us talking about the depreciation, but it all had to do with trying to keep the rates as low as we could without having to pass on a tremendous jump in the rates from where they were to where they needed to be to continue to fund depreciation, plus do what we needed to do with the O&M budget to address the consent order that we have with DHEC. So, that's, the corrective action plans, just look over that letter again I guess I'm really talking to one city this year. Look over that letter, let Allison know if you have any questions, but it's got some, I think all of them were 2 or 3 pages that she had, but I think it's till the middle of January, just to, most of it was just some
That
clarification.
sounds like
type
Seneca's on top of it.
questions. So that's all I had with that. Any questions about the CAP or even the feasibility portion of it, or the CIP O&M item there? And I'll email that chart to you just so you can see, because
Formatted.
the formatting of it, and that's what we had to put that together in that way, because we're having to be ahead of you guys with the rate study. So Daryl Parker with Wildan, that's how he wanted it, because he knew in looking at what rates needed to be and forecasting out for a period of time and putting the rate model together, that's what he needed to see to know a ballpark amount of what revenues we needed per year to be able to either fund it through cash or fund it through debt or the combination of both.
Yeah, if he's used to looking at this right here, that'd be great, I can get that and we can just put it in the same format, you know, be consistent in that.
And I'll just send it to you in a spreadsheet, that way you can just manipulate it as you wish.
I'll just do it the same way, I don't know if I'll get it printed out that large.
Yeah. Well, that's the only way I can see it, you know, we talk about zooming in to be able to see stuff on the screen,
Yeah.
and even that's hard to see.
I
still
got a
have to
pretty
use
big screen, but
magnifying
boy, it's hard to
glass.
read that stuff.
But I'll email that to you, I'll make a note to email that out today.
All right, cool.
Okay, sewer use regulation, I was hoping to have an update on this, so I'd reached out, after I put this agenda together, I had reached out to the Department of Environmental Services, our contact down in Columbia, Casey Jarman, who our draft revision of the regulation was submitted to back several months ago, and I have not heard back, so I don't know where they still are in the review process, but, you know, as we knew all along, this was gonna be a long matter. So I'll try to get her again by the end of the week and have an update by the time we have our board meeting. But again, the way the process will work is, you know, making the assumption that they're fine with all of our suggested changes, which, you know, and generally are minor modifications to the existing regulation. Assuming that they're come back and say, we're okay with everything in Columbia, then it comes back here, then it'll go before the board. The board will either decide we are going to advertise it as approved by DES for public comment, so it'll go out for like a 30-day public notice period, or we're gonna make a revision to it. We don't like the way it does this after thinking about it more. Well, that starts the whole process over again, back to our attorney to review, back to DES to review, then back to the board to put out for public comment or public notice. So either way, it's gonna eventually get back to the board and authorizing it to be put out for public comment. Goes out for 30 days. At the next board meeting, the public there'll be a dedicated spot, much like the county does. You're familiar with the county, when they have an ordinance, there'll be a public comment period specifically for that ordinance, and give the members of the public the opportunity to make any comments that they may have on it. If they do have comments and the board feels they want to take action on those and make modifications, that starts that whole process over again. Or if the board approves it, then they become effective immediately. So, you know, we're looking, even once we hear back from DES, we're probably looking at a couple of months if everything goes right. So it's not one of those endeavors that, you know, and I'm sure it's by design. It's not something you make a rash decision on and implement it right away and just put it out there. So I'll find something out on that, and I'll either send out an update to the committee, or I will just let everybody know at the January 6th board meeting.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Miscellaneous, the only miscellaneous item I have, and this is something that the F&A committee caught yesterday, was that in the upcoming meetings, the January F&A meeting is actually January 28th and not January 20th. So just a note on that. The schedule for the coming year will be brought forth to the board at the January 6th meeting for consideration and approval. It's put together in accordance with the bylaws that we have. And if you want to see what that is, it was approved to take to the board by the F&A committee yesterday. So you can look at the F&A agenda packet and see what those dates are, but it's the same as what we have now. This committee will meet the third Wednesday of each month. And with that, that's all I have. Merry Christmas to you all.
January 6th, is everything?
We gonna have an insurrection then?
Yeah.
And then, I will say too, that it was decided that the majority of the responses we got was that no meal necessary.
Right.
So, you know, if you have any council members or whatnot, just let them know. And will you let them
It just
know,
be a
Lynn,
meeting.
that we're not gonna be providing a meal this time?
Okay.
When you send the notice of that.
That was interesting, you know, I gave my comments, but I didn't think about it being a magnet to bring people to it, so it was interesting to come back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how turnout is, but you know, so many times we'll get, you know, again, I'm speaking for Ms. Stevens here, but because she sends out the invite, the RSVP, and people are gonna say that they'll come in, and they don't show up, so we're left with all this leftover food that we have to do something with.
That's what I was thinking.
And it used to be when we staffed the plant 24 hours a day, we could bring the food back here that night after the meeting, and the workers at night would eat off of it. But we don't do that anymore, so then we're stuck with all this food. I think you left it in the back of your car last year because it was cold enough. So, you know, it's just
Aren't
becomes
you
a waste.
excited, Lynn?
I just wanna say, you know, you can always, my wife volunteers over at the, Our Daily Bread up in Seneca, and I mean, you can always, and they work 5-6 days a week, you can always take food like that up there, they'll make good use of it.
So,
Just for information, I mean, hopefully we won't get in that situation again, but
yeah, well, it's, at least for this coming year, our plan is not to, because I think all three of the city administrators, you know, work under council, they said no, correct?
yeah, okay, good.
So, you know,
Wasn't
so
by
it was
myself.
decided we'll just forego that
That's good.
this year. I think everybody, it's a long day, you know,
Yeah.
many people have already worked a full day, they don't wanna stick around until 7 o'clock.
Get to the
Mhm.
point.
That's the other thing too, some people did show up to the meetings, but then they left before the meal.
Yeah. That's
Even though
me.
they had signed up and they were included
I
in the
don't
head
never sign up for
count.
the meal, but I leave after the meeting, I don't know what.
And it will be at the Westminster Depot this year.
Yeah, I see that.
And with that, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Happy
same
New
here,
Year.
everybody, been a good year, been a good year.
Well, we covered everything. We committee dinner discussion, I don't have anything. So we should be good there, so with that, I've got a couple items probably talk with that we're done, but, most to adjourn.
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, well, we'll consider ourselves.
And you're gonna email this out?
Yes, sir, I'll email it
I'll let
out.
you guys.
I'll email it. I'll send it just to the cities as the spreadsheet and the PDF attachment. Do you want it, the